Hello, it's everybody's favorite gold-rated tank main coming at you again with another dosage of Overwatch. Today, we're going to be covering the Overwatch League, and we're going to be ranking all 20 teams on a tier-by-tier list. So as you can see on the screen, we currently have these teams in 5 different tier lists, if my screen would stop spazzing out for a second. Basically, we've got the rebuilding tier, which is for teams that have a lot of contenders talent, don't really have a lot of Overwatch League experience on their roster, and then more building for the future. The upset tier for teams that have more established players, probably aren't going to make much noise, but they will get a big upset or two throughout the season. Playoff push teams are the teams who probably finish around 10 to 13th. They're going to be outside chances for the finals. Their fan base will probably be optimistic for the finals. They probably won't make it in. They're going to be close. The finals contenders and dark horse teams, teams that are probably going to make it into finals and most likely won't make much noise once they get there, but they also are a dark horse contender for the championship, and the championship contenders is pretty self-explanatory. So basically we're going through all these 20 teams. We've got the Charge, Defiant, my team, the Toronto Defiant, the Shanghai Dragons, the Seoul Dynasty, Paris Eternal, Dallas Fuel, Philadelphia Fusion, LA Gladiators, Chengdu Hunters, Washington Justice, Florida Mayhem, NYXL, Houston Outlaws, Atlanta Reign, Shock, Spark, Spitfire, Titans, Uprising, and Valiant. I just want to reiterate, guys, I am not an analyst. I am, once again, like I said in the intro, I'm a gold-rated tank main. Do not take what I say here as absolute fact for these teams. It's more of just a fan's guide to the tiers of the Overwatch League, according to a Toronto Defiant fan. So if I'm a bit delusional, blame it on that, because obviously I haven't picked the right team to support. Anyway guys, let's get into it. Starting off with the rebuilding tier, we're going to go with the Boston Uprising, the LA Valiant, and the London Spitfire. This is in no particular order, guys, but I do think that Boston will be the worst team come next year, end of next year. Boston will be finishing on the bottom of the league. They have, a lot of people who could play well, but I don't think they have enough there, and there's a lot of maybes on that roster, so not really rating them very highly. The Valiant lost a lot of good players, and they didn't really replace them, as did the Spitfire. The Spitfire probably blew it up the most, but they have also the most wildcards of any team. Only one player, I believe, has previous Overwatch League experience, and he was a backup. So how the Spitfire do is purely up to the gods. Coming into the upset tier, I'm going to put the Chengdu Hunters, the Paris Eternal, the Florida Mayhem, and the Houston Outlaws. They're going to be my 4 picks for the upset tier. Houston is an interesting team. Jesus, can my screen stop changing size? Houston's an interesting team because I feel like Houston fans think the team's going to be much better than it is, and analysts think the team's going to be much worse than what they are. The problem for the Outlaws for me, and the reason why they're here, not in the playoff push tier or in the rebuilding tier, to be fair, is they have too much talent to be there. If everything goes wrong, then they can for sure end up at an 18th or 19th spot, but if everything goes right, I think they have a ceiling of like 10th to 11th. They signed a bunch of good players, but they also lost a lot of good players, and what made Houston a dangerous team last year was the team synergy. They played well as a team. I don't know if they still have that with the new signings, as good as Meko and the other signings are for the Outlaws. I don't know if the team camaraderie and team chemistry is going to be the same. So Houston's going to stay in this tier. They're either going to end up, playoff push team or a rebuilding team. I don't think they'll end up, placed with Eternal and Chengdu. They'll either be above them or well below them. The Mayhem, they're a team that has been struggling the last couple of years. They could be starting to get back on track. They got a lot of talent on their team now. It's just all about how they do. If they can overcome, because how they've done the last couple of years hasn't really been the most uplifting thing. Can they put it all together now? The Eternal, they've got Sparkle now, which is great. They're going to have to wait for him to come to age, so I think they're going to be one of the lesser teams to start off with, but they might get some momentum towards the end of the season. And Chengdu made some nice signings. They've still got Amon there, so they'll still be a competent team, at least, in terms of the Overwatch League. I just don't see them really making big moves, like the big moves up the leaderboard, up the table, sorry, that other teams we may see from other teams. I think they're just going to be stuck in that limbo sort of space in the Overwatch League. Moving on to the playoff push tier, my Toronto Defiant will go here, the Dallas Fuel will also go here, and I'm going to put the Washington Justice. The playoff push tier, my Toronto Defiant probably ranked too high, but I'm a fan of the team and I can see them going all the way. Not all the way to winning the title, maybe not, that's going to be a bit, out of this world, no. But I can see a world where the teams in front of them fall over themselves and they sort of sneak in as like a 8 seed into the playoffs. I think there is a very slim chance that happens, but that's if everything goes right for the Defiant and everything goes wrong for everyone else. The Defiant will probably stick around 12th. A lot of people have been putting them down quite low in their power rankings of the Defiant, and I can sort of see why, but I don't think the Defiant will end up. They could be there right now because everyone thinks that every team's going to play up to their abilities and do well. That's just not how things work in the real world. So you can expect that a few of these teams, it's just not going to work. Maybe, for example, the Mayhem, the Fuel, teams that have some decent expectations, they both fall down. And the Defiant are a team that I don't think will do that because they got a lot of solo players. They got Kareev, Agilities, Surefor, Kellex, and Nevix. So they got a lot of, that mid-tier talent that can sort of do a bit. There isn't too many weaknesses on the roster. Only real weakness is the main tank role with Beast. He's kind of a wild card. We don't know what we're going to get from him. But they're a middle tier team. I don't think they'll make the finals. I don't think I went through the schedule today, and I think I could pick maybe at best 14 wins for the team, but I think that'll be good enough for like the 10th, 11th position if the league ends up shaking out the way I think it is, where some teams that we expect to do well will not do well, and some surprise teams will come up. The Fuel, they got Decay and Doha, but they did lose OGE in the transition. You have a team that boom or bust this year for me for the Fuel. If it doesn't work out, you just got to try and start new, start fresh. If it does finally work out for the Fuel though, even if they finish once again 10th or 11th, then you can keep going with the way you're going and know that you've actually made progress. The Justice looking to try and build off the end of last year and how well Corey can do. They revamped their support line, so that's going to be a big question mark going into the season, but Corey is just very good and he's got some good DPS partners there for him, so it's just, can you build around an incredible DPS player like that is going to be the secret for the Justice success. Moving on to the Dark Horse teams, this one's tough. I'm going to put the Spark, the Charge, the Gladiators, the Titans, the Seoul Dynasty, and I will put the Shanghai Dragons. This is going to be the biggest tier, 6 teams in there. Well, the Spark, a team I think overperformed last year. They're a very good team, but they're probably my 9th best team, I reckon, right now. I don't think they have enough to go all the way. They finished 4th last year, so they definitely can make it at least that far. But I feel like last year was a bit too high for how good they actually are as a team. The Dynasty, I reckon they're going to be a team that gets a slow start to the season, but they will eventually get it together because they got a lot of players coming in from the old Spitfire roster. They got Dosen, Gesture, and Prophet, all very good players. Better than very good, they're exceptional players. But I feel like that team coordination, that team communication may not be at the level of some of the other top teams, and that's where I'm comparing them to. I'm comparing them to other top teams because that's the level that they should be playing at. They're probably going to be a team that finishes the end of the year strong. Granted, there's no big mess up off stage. The Charge, the Dragons, and the Gladiators are all quite similar. The Gladiators made some bold moves, but the Charge and Dragons both sort of just added and didn't really lose too much. All 3 of these teams are teams that I would consider the most likely to come in that 4th, 5th position. I think these 3 teams should have realistic expectations for playing in the playoffs. The Dynasty and the Spark, I can see where they have missed, and I can see where the Titans would miss or get more in them in a second. But I think these 3 teams, it's going to take something spectacular for them to miss the finals. Yeah, I think the Gladiators are actually a team that I expect to do decently well, as do the Dragons. And honestly, I don't know much about the Charge roster, but considering how well they've done in last year, and how their roster hasn't really changed any dramatically worse moves for the Charge, they've sort of only really They haven't really changed much in terms of talent level, so they should remain similar to where they were last year. The Titans are a very interesting team that I would like to discuss. They didn't make a lot of moves this offseason, but the moves that they did make were quite interesting, I do say. First up, they did sign Ryu Hong from the Dynasty, which will hurt the Dynasty, not having that veteran voice there, but it could help the Titans having, an Overwatch League pro who's got some different experiences than what most of the Titans who were a part of Runaway before they became the Vancouver Titans. So it's a different viewpoint, and I think a lot of players on the Vancouver Titans would respect Ryu Hong for what he's been able to do. He's probably not the best player anymore, and he probably won't get much playing time because they've got Twilight now. So he probably won't get much playing time on stage, but he'd be a very good member to have off it. The big thing is the tank role with Fissure and losing Bumper and TT, and the reason why, this is all rumors at this point, but the reason why Bumper and TT were both let go was because of the team didn't like the way they played. The team sort of turned on Bumper and TT a bit, and apparently this is all rumors at this point. I don't think there's been any confirmation, but this has also been happening between certain players and the coaching staff, which isn't the same coaching staff they had at Runaway. So there's been a bit of friction between the old Runaway players and the new coaching staff and management. And if you're going to chuck Fissure, who, if you don't know about the exploits of Fissure, I'll be very surprised. He's been a very notable player, I would say, in the Overwatch League. He's retired already. He's left teams. He's been kicked off teams. He got kicked off the Gladiators. He left the London Spitfire, and he retired from the Seoul Dynasty, all in a matter of like 12 months, I think, roughly. So he hasn't really got the most stellar track record when it comes to the Overwatch League, saying that he's an incredibly talented main tank, and if everything goes right, the Titans could win it all. I'm not going to say no, they're an incredibly talented team, but with all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes of the Titans, I think it's just, if not more likely, that it all goes wrong, and the Titans end up at the bottom half of the leaderboard. And that seems something incredibly weird to say with Twilight, Janu, Sherman Sue, all these guys who can really play well. And the Titans to finish like 13th? That just doesn't seem to be a way it happens. But if you lose, if Fissure just decides to nick off, there's no backup main tank that I can remember being signed for this roster. There's no one to push Fissure to keep him in line. There's no one to replace him if he does decide to go AWOL. And if he starts going AWOL, there's going to be a lot of internal conflict anyway, even in the best situation if you've got a player doing that. So in a situation where reportedly it's been very strenuous, it has the opportunity to just blow up in their face. They're just a really weird team now. I don't know how it's going to work. Moving on, and of course there's going to be no surprise to who's in the championship tier. We've got the San Francisco Shock, the NYXL, both my pick. Those two teams are my picks for the grand final come September, I believe, is when it's taking place. The Atlanta Reign. I think there's also a world where we see the Reign play the Shock. I think the Shock are pretty much nearly a lock to play at least the grand final, at least top 4, playing to get into the grand final, have a chance to get into the grand final before, the week before, playing in those games before the finals, before the grand final, excuse me. I think they have like a 98% chance of getting there in my head, and I reckon they have a very high chance of going back to the grand final, because there's nothing really to say that they're going to be significantly worse. We haven't heard anything about internal conflict. They've lost a few members of their coaching staff, but the bulk of it still remains. They lost a backup player, only one backup player to the Toronto Defiant, and they signed ANS, who's a Widowmaker specialist from Korean Contenders, I believe. So they haven't really lost a whole lot. They haven't really gained a whole lot, but they seem to be the same team as last year, and the team last year was incredibly dominant in both GOATs and Double Shield, and so I feel like they'll be fine now with the hero pools thanks to how versatile they can be. The NYXL, a team that I just can't shake the nagging feeling that they're going to choke again in the finals, but last year they choked in the stage finals a few times, but they got it all together in the overall finals, in the overall playoffs. And I think that's a lot of stuff to do with their new coaching staff. And the new coaching that they put in plays a lot more of aggressive role, plays a lot more, mixing things up a bit rather than the NYXL that we've all known, and I won't say loved, but, the NYXL that we knew, who were quite a defensive team. They let you make the mistake and then they pounced on it from there. This team's probably going to push a lot more, and I think that Siydo has a chance to become... He's my pick for the MVP because of the way he, leads this team. He's the leader of this team. And so, just so I know, he is my pick for MVP if Sinatra does not go off on Doomfist again, which I doubt he will, because Doomfist isn't really the pick of the characters right now. So I think, with Siydo, with Jonak, they did lose Meko, which is, not ideal, but they did sign some good tanks to replace him. I believe they signed a tank from the Charge, whose name is currently escaping my brain. Hopefully I can edit that in later. Yeah, so I think the Shock and the NYXL should realistically expect a rematch of last year's losers bracket final in the grand final, if the Atlanta Reign do not get a chance to play the NYXL, because the NYXL apparently have not been able to beat the Atlanta Reign. At least last year, the Reign upset them, I believe, twice. And they also upset the Shock. So the Reign are a team that has a lot of talent. They just need to put it all together for a full season. Play that consistent role, because they can play lights out, but then they need to be able to do it consistently. And the Fusion, they're a team that's sort of separate from the rest of these teams. The Reign, NYXL, and Shock are all your three main title contenders. They're a team that I want to put above the Dark Horse tier, mostly to stop the Dark Horse tier from turning into 7 teams. But I feel like not a lot of people are talking about Philadelphia as a potential champion. They lost Season 1, and from memory, they didn't do a whole lot in Season 2 finals, if they even made it. I can't really remember. 10th. They finished 10th with a 15-13 record. So did Guangzhou. I feel like they've got enough this year. And if they, once again, if they, like similar to the Reign, if they put everything together, it can absolutely work out. And I think they're a team that people won't really be looking out for, so they can get a kind of jump on teams. Teams like the NYXL and Atlanta Reign may, not really expect them to be on their level, and they could just get a couple upsets. And once you start getting that momentum going, crazy things can happen for a team once you start getting some momentum. And I feel like the Fusion can sort of build that momentum, play with the talent that they have, and they can go all the way. It's not going to be a high chance of it happening, but if I'm a Philly fan, then I would actually be very excited for this team. So as you can see, this is my tier list. It's a mess. We got 6 teams in one tier. My picks for the finals, I feel like this is an important thing though, because I've got 10 teams as potential finals, and you need 8 teams who can make it in. So the 4 teams are going to finish Shock, NYXL, Reign, Fusion. Then moving on, I'm going to have the Dragons at 5, the Gladiators at 6. I'm going to have the Charge at 7 and the Dynasty at 8. I'm going to say the Titans miss the finals, miss the playoffs, because I think that it just goes wrong with Fissure on board. I don't think it's going to work. And the Spark, I think they just miss out. I think the Dynasty just start to get some momentum in the second half of the season. Once the communication issues between the old Spitfire players and the old Dynasty players, once that gets wrinkled out, maybe it's already been wrinkled out over the off season. But once they start to find their form, I feel like they are a better team than the Spark, and they may just get that momentum and carry themselves into the finals. So that is my tier list, as well as my finals predictions, incidentally. I do think it will be a Shock NYXL final, and I do my winner. Okay, I'm gonna give the winner as well. Okay, so here's all the things. Shock NYXL Grand Final, Siydo MVP, Shock wins it, and I'm going to say that Violet, actually, a support character, is going to win the Finals MVP. That's a very bold claim to make, several months out from, the Grand Final to see who will win the Grand Final MVP. I'm going to say Violet. Siydo wins regular season MVP, Shock vs NYXL, rank finished 3rd. That's my list, that's my tier list, plus my finals predictions. So if you guys enjoyed watching this Overwatch League content, you want to see any more, then hit the like and subscribe button. Of course, make sure you actually do click that subscribe button, it helps us out a ton, and I'm an analytics guy, so make my heart sing. Also, if you want to see any other type of content, not necessarily related to Overwatch or the Overwatch League, but you want to see anything else, maybe with Marvel or Star Wars or any sort of gaming series really, we can do that for you, so make sure you put the comments down below. I also have polls. You may have noticed them throughout the video. They will be up above in the upper right hand corner, I do believe, if I am not mistaken, about teams that I think where I've ranked them is quite controversial. So teams like the Outlaws and the Defiant and the Titans and the Fusion, I think will be the 4 teams that should be up there if I am not mistaken. So let me know how you feel about those teams. Yeah, I guess that's all for today, guys. That's a wrap.